Is Black Ops 6 skill-based matchmaking making people rage quit? Maybe even you. Are you one of those guys that are abandoning your lobby since you just can't stand another sweat experience like the one you just had the match before? Knowing that it'll take only a minute to get you into a new lobby instead. Well, I've gotten pretty curious lately what kind of experience people have when it comes to skill-based matchmaking in Black Ops 6 since the game has now been out a couple of weeks. We know for sure nowadays that skill-based matchmaking is a thing in Call of Duty, and some people also believe that EOMM is playing a role when it comes to the overall game and experience when playing multiplayer in Black Ops 6. But as far as I know, EOMM hasn't been proved, at least not yet, to be an actual thing in Black Ops 6. With that said, let's focus on the skill-based matchmaking. From what I've understood, there are different skill brackets within the skill-based matchmaking. Someone mentioned 15. Whatever the number is, it means that you'll most likely move both up and sometimes down depending on your skill level and how you're performing that actual day. I've experienced this myself, where it's been quite obvious that since I was performing really well in a couple of matches, ending up on top of the scoreboard, being MVP for example, I was then for sure moved upwards in the brackets, if you will, into an even tighter and more sweaty lobby the next game. But when I then choose to rank up another weapon, I started to lose placement, getting much further down in the scoreboard. I then was matched a few matches later with less skilled players. However, at this point it often happens that I get into a team that is pretty bad and I have to carry pretty hard, whilst the enemy team seems to be more equally matched, or even is playing as a party. I guess most of you guys might have experienced the same thing as me. So what do I do? Well, I've gotten kind of tired of those scenarios described, so I've started to leave those lobbies or matches more often than I normally would, since I believe it's simply not worth it. Especially since it usually only takes about a minute to get into a new match. And besides skill-based matchmaking, this is a problem in the game. Many games back in the days would let you stay within the lobby you just played, which I believe is a great option. If you feel that the matchmaking and the experience playing with these guys were good and fun, then the only thing the matchmaking needs to do is to swap players around a bit in the already existing lobby, and you're then good to go for another match. As someone wrote on Reddit, I would much rather see a system that puts a player into a lobby that they want to stay in for hours, rather than just keep researching over and over again. This would also allow the player to always have a stable ping. I totally agree upon this, even if skill-based matchmaking is still involved in the game. Yes, I sometimes miss the days when ping were king and nothing else. But anyhow, this guy continued by saying, people react differently to getting stomped. Some actually will stay and try to get revenge on the people that stomped them. The inability to rematch players creates a disconnected feeling for the player and causes their frustration to be aimed at the game and its design, instead of them being motivated to get revenge on the people that stomped them. If they don't want to, they can leave, and then it is a choice they made. Also, a lot of stompers, if they see the lobby is too easy, will branch out and use underleveled guns if they feel like the lobby is too easy for them. The players can balance the game out themselves and actually be a community when given the tools. Well, you might agree or disagree what this guy is saying, but I believe these are interesting and also some valid points in many ways. Because if you think about it, bad players that can hardly aim or move properly in the game will be more or less isolated in these lower skill brackets if they never ever get a chance to meet better players. They're simply stuck. Now, that seems to be a scenario that Activision wants in this case, since these stats, or their stats and research, shows that these players are more likely to stay within the game when being somewhat protected within these lower skill brackets. And it also increases, of course, the chances to earn more money for Activision, since they are then more likely to visit the shop to buy that cool looking skin, camo or whatnot. But again, how fun is it to have the same gameplay experience over and over again with very little variation? Because that's my biggest concern when it comes to skill-based matchmaking. There's hardly any variation between matches any longer when skill-based matchmaking is involved. And I mean across the board, same if you're good at the game or if you're not good at the game. So the skill-based matchmaking in the end, when it comes to the matchmaking experience, isn't so much about skill assessments, but a matchmaking experience that feels very rectified and therefore becomes tiresome. before skill-based matchmaking started to become a thing in most modern shooters nowadays, there was way more variation between matches, and I have to say that I enjoyed playing online shooters much more back then, as a whole. Even when there was, for example, skill-based matchmaking already in Halo 2, they at least understood that they had to have a system that was flexible or loose enough so that players didn't feel that they were put into one category and one category only when it comes to the actual matchmaking. This gave the players a matchmaking experience that was more enjoyable, more variety, and also made them stick to the actual lobby they were matched into longer, not to mention the urge and feel to play longer when it comes to hours in the game, and also the willingness to log into the game again the next day and the day after that, etc. As mentioned, the most important reason that Activision is using quite a strong setting when it comes to skill-based matchmaking in Call of Duty and Black Ops 6 for that sake, is because they want the lower skill-based matchmaking brackets of players to continue to play the game. But the other day I watched a video by Nero Cinema, a Call of Duty YouTuber, where he kind of reversed the reasoning and said, well, what would happen then if medium or above medium players started to rage quit more often, or simply left the game more often? What would then Activision do? Because I bet that the majority of Call of Duty players, after all, number-wise, are the ones that are somewhere in the middle when it comes to skill, and I also bet that those guys are the ones that are still playing the game after the honeymoon is over, and also later down the line when the game is getting into the last season before the next Call of Duty is about to release. Yes, I'm referring to the core community of the actual game. But as we know it by now, skill-based matchmaking is here to stay. It won't disappear, I don't believe that, although I wish that they at least would consider to loosen things up a bit. Since we're talking about a casual arcade shooter with a social respawn playlist foremost and not a ranked playlist, well, that will come later with Season 1. There's a lot to say about this, and if you've come this far when it comes to my video, you probably also know, or at least can imagine, why some players tend to stick to 1 or 2 guns max in the game, since they feel forced to do so in order to stay somewhat competitive and not getting totally shit on while playing. But even so, and also besides skill-based matchmaking, I do recommend you to not take the game all too serious when it comes to KD and stats and all that, and therefore maybe branch out once in a while in order to play with other guns than the actual meta in the game. I assure you, it becomes more fun after all, and if you want the challenge, or if you're someone like me that are maybe above medium skilled player wise, then it can also be fun to use that DMR or LMG class instead, just for the challenge, or in order to surprise some players to show that it's actually possible to enjoy the game without having to play with the same gun over and over again. Well, that's a kind of a byproduct, of course, of having skill-based matchmaking in casual games, so in a way I can't blame people for sweating with the same gun. Well, with that said, thanks for watching and have a beautiful day. It would be nice to hear about your skill-based matchmaking experiences as well. Take care now and talk to you later. Bye.